Point is that the word atheist, unlike just simply not believing in God, has bad connotations. And so, to some extent, people have wished to depart from that and change the name to non-theist or secularist or non-believer. And I waver back and forth as to what's the best name to use. I sometimes call myself an atheist, sometimes a non-theist, and sometimes...
Hi folks, hope you're okay. It's good to see you. Well, I love you all and love to all the atheists out there. Now, we're going to just show you how completely, as an atheist, if you're open-minded, how completely dishonest, lacking in scholarship, and really, as an open-minded atheist, you need to really start to question things about the atheism that you've got involved in, because it's indoctrinating you and you've not realized it. Now, the modern atheists on YouTube are going around and have been saying for some time, as we've heard thousands of times, what atheism is, and they will tell you that atheism is an absence of belief due to an absence or a lack of evidence. Alright, it's an absence of belief in God due to an absence of evidence or a lack of evidence. Alright, that's the definition of atheism today. Right, so what we need to do is get some real intellectual firepower, right? And let's see, with some real intellectual firepower, what is the definition of atheism. Now, I've got a book here that is pretty major firepower stuff. I mean, this is top of the league. This is the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Alright, so this is as far as being at the top of the ladder. I mean, we're not even talking Oxford Dictionary. We're talking Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Alright, this is the top of the ladder, where when we want accuracy for definitions, this is the place to come if we're going to talk about atheism. Now, no word of a lie, I'll read this definition of atheism. Alright, this is in the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Alright, now don't forget, the atheist definition on YouTube is this: that atheism is a lack of belief or an absence of belief in God due to a lack of evidence or absence of evidence, adequate evidence. Something like that. You can refine the words and make it sound a lot better than what I've just said, but that's generally the argument. Now, here is a definition of atheism in this Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Atheism, listen to this, ostensibly the doctrine that there is no God. That is not the same as the modern definition. Alright? It's not the same as the modern definition on YouTube land. Atheism is ostensibly the doctrine that there is no God. Some atheists support this claim by arguments. In other words, there are some atheists that don't follow the default position which you modern atheists keep banging on about all the time, and this is saying that's not the case. Atheism is ostensibly the doctrine that there is no God. Some atheists support this claim by arguments, but these arguments are usually directed against the Christian concept of God and are largely irrelevant to other possible gods. Thus, much Western atheism may be better understood as the doctrine that the Christian God does not exist. Now, you modern atheists need to have been honest there. When you define atheism, really what you're saying is you have a prejudice against specifically the Christian God. Alright? That is really part of your definition. This little snippet of what the definition of atheism is is completely not what you YouTube atheists actually say. And this is top academic stuff, folks. Top academic stuff, completely blowing away the definition of modern atheism on YouTube. Alright, there we are. That's the Oxford Companion to Philosophy. Atheism gets blown away today. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.
The only way that people can be good is because they're bribed to be good by the promise of celestial bliss, or they're threatened with the promise of celestial torture going on forever, according to certain religions. So it's a very ignoble reason for being good. But then it's worse than that, because when you think about what the standards of goodness are in at least the holy books that I'm familiar with, they're horrible. You wouldn't wish to know anybody who based their moral values on the Judeo-Christian Bible or the Islamic Quran for a start. I mean, that would be an awful thing to base your morals on, and thank goodness we don't anymore. Because if you notice, when you challenge a religious person about something like stoning adulteresses to death or something, they say, oh, we don't do that anymore. Well, of course we don't do that anymore. That's because we've moved on. And the only way you can justify that on biblical grounds is to cherry pick. You choose those verses of your holy book which fit in with the modern, liberal, decent consensus which we all share, whether we're religious or not, and which clearly does not come from any holy book, because we would have to have some criterion for doing the cherry picking, and that criterion cannot possibly be internal to the holy book. It's obviously got to come from elsewhere, and it's difficult to know exactly where it does come from, but what we can say is that people in the 21st century have a consensus of what is good and what's bad, which is very different from the consensus that people had, for example, in the 18th century. Very different indeed. And that change has come about for non-religious reasons. So I earnestly hope that nobody actually bases their morals on anything, on any kind of holy book. And as a matter of fact, I think the evidence is that they don't.
Hi boss, this is Jake. Hope you're okay today. Just making a quick video. Hope everybody's okay. And just making a quick video about atheism buried 6 feet under. Basically, I offer a challenge to any atheist out there to deal with this issue, and that's basically, how can you get objective moral values from a value system that intrinsically has no value? So for example, nature, as we look at nature, does not say anything about morality in any shape or form. Doesn't say any meaning, any purpose, doesn't say any value. Okay, that's what we see in nature. So if you look at a tree, if you look at a chimpanzee, if you look at anything within nature, it does not have a value system. David Hume and Wittgenstein made comments. Those comments are, you cannot get from in a sort of roundabout way, just summing what they're saying in my own words as a paraphrase. Basically, David Hume and Wittgenstein said that you cannot get value, you can't get from non-value to value. Okay, what they mean is that from nature there is no value, there are no meanings, there is no purpose, there is no value. That is the facts. And so from that situation, you cannot then move from no value to ethical moral values. You can, in quotes, say, well, we can because we are rational, but the rational is part of nature, and nature does not have any value, does not say about purpose or anything concerning meaning. It just does not say that, and the rationality is a part of that. So rationality might state certain factual information about how actions happen, but at the end of the day, the moment you start to put some kind of value statement on your rationality, you are doing exactly that. You are putting some words of value to your rational so-called morality. In other words, rationality is still part of the non-value system of nature. Unless you're going to argue that rationality is not part of nature. You can try and do that if you want to do, but you're locked into a naturalist position that all we have is the material, and at the end of the day, nature does not say anything about value. Even reason is part of nature. So you can't get value from a non-value system. You just can't do it. Now you can try and say that you can get morality from objectively from science. You can say whatever you want, but you can say it, but it cannot be done. It just cannot be done. So that means whenever you start critiquing the Bible from a moral perspective, you're not being consistent with your own position as an atheist. And you might say, as an atheist, well, actually, Jay, we're not locked into naturalism. Well, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, if you want to live by the scientific method, all you've got is natural events, natural phenomena to investigate and to pontificate from. And as you investigate nature and natural phenomenon, it don't say nothing about morality. It don't say nothing about meaning or purpose or value. So you can't get moral, objective values from a non-value system. So when you start criticizing the Bible, which is legitimate to ask questions about the Bible, but you still got to be honest as an atheist. You've got to be honest as an atheist. You are not being consistent with the fact that your own system, based in nature, has no value. And when you start talking about morals or critiquing any other moral system, you're bringing value, you're bringing a value system, a value methodology from a non-value system, from a non-value methodology, because nature does not say anything about morality, and whether you like it or not, you're part of nature. Alright, basically that's your atheism buried 7 feet under. Alright, 6 feet under or 7 feet under, that's the death of your atheism. It's just buried. You can't get off the ground, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you say, no matter what you do, you cannot get off the ground. David Hume and Wittgenstein are more logically consistent than Sam Harris or any of the atheists today who are pontificating any kind of nonsense about they can give us moral objectives from an atheist position. Whatever atheist position that is. It's just absolute nonsense. So if you want to try and argue the case, which is an absolute impossibility, it's an absolute impossibility, but if you want to try and argue the case that from a non-value system, i.e. nature, you can get value, you want to argue that, you go ahead, atheist, but you'll get buried. You will get buried 7 feet under, mate, because you can't do it. Alright? Unless you start going into metaphysics and moving into kind of spiritual ontology or something, you can't do it. You can't do it from the scientific method. Alright? It just can't be done. So I'll leave you with that. Take care and thanks for listening. God bless you.
My first question would be, do you draw a distinction in between blind faith and reasonable faith?
Okay. Is there a distinction? Do I draw a distinction between blind faith and reasonable faith? No.
It's interesting that you say that, because just through my own studies, through my my investigation into this matter, I have come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as proof.
Right.
That there is reasonable faith and there is blind faith. When I drop a ball, to the ground on Earth, it's reasonable for me to believe that the ball will fall the very next time that I drop it. But I can't prove it, just as I can't prove that you exist.
Yes.
I believe that you exist based on a reasonable faith because I can see you, because I can hear you. But our senses can sometimes deceive us. People on cocaine feel bugs in their skin, but that doesn't make it real. People that are taking hallucinogens see things, but it doesn't make it real.
Okay.
So I think it's interesting that you deny the line between reasonable faith.
Yes, I mean, I think we agree. I think we're just using words in a different way. I think it's a semantic thing. Something like when you drop a ball, it falls, and when you drop another ball, it falls, and when you drop another ball, it falls. I don't think I would wish to use the word faith for your belief that the next time you drop it, it will fall. I don't think that's what I would use the word faith for. I think that's normal science. I mean, that's based upon Newton's laws. It's based upon a tremendous body of theory. It's based upon scientific evidence. So I would not use the word reasonable faith the way you're using it. It seems to me you're using reasonable faith for basing beliefs upon evidence. So if you're using reasonable faith to mean belief based upon evidence, then there's no disagreement. We're just using words in a different way. I define faith as belief that's not based upon evidence.
Okay.
And that's why I answered your first question in the way that I did. I don't think we actually disagree, and I'm sure we disagree about other things, but I don't think we disagree about this in an other than semantic way.
Okay. Then my second question, I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to answer no actually to the first one. But yeah, there are surprises every day. My second question is, considering then that we must believe what's based on reason, and reason, of course, is based on experience, correct? Reason is based on the fact that when I drop the ball, it falls every time, so it's reasonable to believe next time I drop the ball, it's going to fall. Why then is it reasonable, considering our experience concerning the law of cause and effect, concerning the fact that our experience tells us that everything which has an effect has a cause? How is it that it's more reasonable to believe that the universe created itself? Because when confined to the natural laws, because nature is bound by its own limits, which are the natural laws. And if nature is bound by the laws which say that matter can't create itself, then how do you get around this issue? That there must have been something outside the system. It is very difficult. It is, of course, a very difficult question to ask how things began at the very beginning of the universe. It's very difficult to even know what the word beginning even means with respect to the universe. That any physicist, any biologist, any scientist, any reasonable person would accept. However, when you ask what's the alternative, if the alternative that's being offered to what physicists now talk about, a big bang, a spontaneous singularity which gave rise to the origin of the universe, if the alternative to that is a divine intelligence, a creator which would have to have been complicated, statistically improbable, the very kind of thing which scientific theories such as Darwin's exists to explain, then immediately we see that however difficult and apparently inadequate the theory of the physicists is, the theory of the theologians that the first cause was a complicated intelligence is even more difficult to accept. They're both difficult, but the theory of the cosmic intelligence is even worse. What Darwinism does is to raise our consciousness to the power of science to explain the existence of complex things, and intelligences and creative intelligences are above all complex things. They're statistically improbable. Darwinism raises our consciousness to the power of science to explain how such entities, and the human brain is one, how such entities can come into existence from simple beginnings. However difficult those simple beginnings may be to accept, they are a whole lot easier to accept than complicated beginnings. Complicated things come into the universe late, as a consequence of slow, gradual, incremental steps. God, if he exists, would have to be a very, very, very complicated thing indeed. So to postulate a God as the beginning of the universe, as the answer to the riddle of the first cause, is to shoot yourself in the conceptual foot, because you are immediately postulating something far, far more complicated than that which you are trying to.
Hi folks, this is Jay. Hope you're okay today. It's good to see you. We're looking at the reliability of the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Mark, and we're reading from this book, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, and we're reading from a professor, John McCrae, who's a PhD. When scholars and students study archaeology, many turn to John McCrae's thorough and dispassionate 432 textbook on archaeology in the New Testament, and Professor John McCrae is an eminent scholar, and you know, has tremendous credentials. And this is in page 99 in Strobel's book. It says, archaeology may support the credibility of Luke, says Strobel, but he isn't the only author of the New Testament. I wonder what scientists would have to say about John, whose gospel was sometimes considered suspect because he talked about locations that couldn't be verified. Some scholars charge that since he failed to get these basic details straight, John must not have been close to the events of Jesus' life. The conclusion, however, has been turned upside down in recent years. McCrae says, the scholar, there have been several discoveries that have shown John to be very accurate. McCrae pointed out, for example, in John 1, chapter 5, verse 1 to 15, records how Jesus healed an invalid by the pool of Bethesda. John provides the details that the pool had 5 porticos. For a long time people cited this as an example of John being inaccurate because no such place had been found. But more recently the pool of Bethesda has been excavated, and it lies maybe 45 feet below ground, and sure enough there were 5 porticos, which means colonnaded porches or walkways exactly as John had described. And you have other discoveries, the pool of Siloam from John 9:6, Jacob's well from John 14:12, the probable location of the stone pavement near the Jaffa Gate where Jesus appeared before Pilate in John chapter 19:13, even Pilate's own identity, all of which have lent historical credibility to John's gospel. So this challenges the allegations that the gospel of John was written so long after Jesus that it can't possibly be accurate. I said, says Strobel. Most definitely, he replied. In fact, McCrae reiterated what Dr. Bruce Metzer had told me about archaeologists finding a fragment of John 18 that leading papyrologists have dated to about AD 125, by demonstrating that the copies of John existed this early and as far as Egypt. Archaeology has effectively dismantled speculation that John had been composed well into the 2nd century, too long after Jesus' life to be reliable. So we'll go on to the Gospel of Mark in the next video. So that's the historical reliability there of the Gospel of John. So please share your thoughts, what you think of that, and that's on page 99 of this book, okay, if you want to check the source. Alright, thank you for listening, and God bless you.